We're right from Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll open with public comment. Is there any public comment? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dennis Nelson. I'm representing the Three Forks Rural Fire District and the Rural Fire Board this morning. Just a refresher, if you remember, I was here 2 weeks ago, made an oral presentation regarding a safety situation, actually a safety problem that we have on one of our subdivisions down there that the Rural Fire District covers, specifically Mountain Vista. The Rural Fire Board met this last week and discussed it further. At that time decided that they wanted to also follow up my verbal and oral presentation to you folks with a letter of notification, if you will. So if I may, I'd like to just take the time to read this letter in real quickly. And this goes, I've got 3 copies, one for each of you, and also a copy is being mailed to Dave Schlosser. He's the registered agent with the state for the Homeowners Association in Mountain Vista. But the Three Forks Rural Fire Board has been informed and observed that there is only one access for emergency services at Mountain Vista subdivision located in Broadwater County due to a road closure. The subdivision, as approved by Broadwater County, was required to have 2 accesses for safety issues. The lack of a second access prompts a serious safety issue for our firemen and the residents of the subdivision. The Three Forks Rural Fire Board is in agreement that for safety reasons, the incident commander or truck bosses will determine if in fact it is safe to enter and engage in any incident in the Mountain Vista subdivision. Obviously that means we are not going to pull any fire protection. We're going to continue fire protection. We're just going to leave it up to the incident commanders and the bosses that are on site at that particular incident. Our representatives of the Three Forks Rural Fire Board has verbally informed the Broadwater Commission of this safety concern at a public meeting, and this letter will serve as written notification. The Three Forks Rural Fire Board unanimously requests that the Broadwater Commission promptly address this issue with the appropriate parties to correct this issue. So that I would just like entered into as an official notification of our serious concerns of a safety issue that we have down there in your fire district. And we've got from you, Laura, and Daryl. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, see none. Let's see, we'll go to the minutes here of October 7th, 2019 for approval.
I'll move to approve the minutes on October 17th.
Second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve minutes October 7th. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Have claims in the amount of $11,700.32.
I'll move to pay the approved claims in the amount of $11,700.32.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve claims. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. have claims in the amount of $182,116.64.
I move to pay the claims in the amount of $182,116.04. Is it 4 cents?
64.
64 cents.
I'll second the motion.
Motion been made and seconded to pay claims in said amount. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. A letter here from the Broadwater County Trust Board on October 8, 2019. The Trust Board, he's heard a presentation by Jeremy Fadness. Sean Higley was out of town, and after discussion, the Trust Board approved a plan of action to move forward for a master plan for the fairgrounds. They are requesting that we act on this plan as quickly as possible, so I would assume we would want to agenda this for next week. To approve.
I think Sean's gonna be here today to give us an update
Okay.
at 11, so.
So I guess we can do some commissioner update. I attended a working meeting at the THS board last Friday, or I believe it was maybe Thursday, for preparation for the paper signing tomorrow at 10:30 at the community library, and the department heads meeting, and that's about it.
I attended the department head meetings as well, mosquito board last week, and will be on, at the meeting tomorrow via phone because of the conference that I will be attending.
Let's see, we had our meeting with Congressman Gianforte. Had a trust board meeting, and we'll talk about some of those issues that were discussed at that meeting today. Mosquito board meeting. I think that what's going to happen, I can't remember the date, let me look to make sure, that we are considering expanding the mosquito district. And there's going to be a meeting in November 20th, 10 a.m. up at the Big Bull, for anybody interested in learning more about the expansion of the mosquito district. LAC meeting, it was a good meeting. Things that were discussed there mostly are funding that we need for, but I forgot her name. Melinda. Yeah. Yeah, Melinda. So she does some great work here in our county, and so we're gonna see if we can find something for her. And then we had a fair board meeting last night, discussed the toilet vaults over at the park, and going forward with some of the other projects that they have in mind.
Yes.
I apologize, I missed public comment. And I think it's important we talk about it. This morning, an explosive, or an improvised explosive device was found on the playground at Rosser School in Helena. It did detonate. And that causes concern. So we're gonna try to jump in today and make sure, we're gonna go do some checking for ourselves, but it also comes back to courthouse security. And I think that it's important maybe here in the future weeks or something, we get a group together to figure out a way to make this courthouse more secure because of things like that. That right now, it's an open door, and I think that this is, we're getting to a part in our lives and our society that we need to make sure that we keep our employees and our citizens safe when they walk in the doors here. So with what's transpiring, it's 30 miles away, fairly close. I think that at some point we need to have that conversation and see what we can do to make things a little safer. So that's all I wanted to say this morning. I apologize for being late. I was just kind of getting some more details on what happened up in Helena, so I apologize for the tardiness on it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
Yep.
We had a discussions group started about 3 or 4 years ago. We would meet upstairs, it was all elected officials and Mike Myers and Mike Conkey talking about this. I think we only had one meeting, but I think it would be smart to reconvene that group and continue those discussions. I don't know why it fell off.
You know, I don't know. We had some pretty good ideas, and
Yeah,
I'm not sure where it went away, but I know when you start having explosives going off, it raises your attention fairly quickly, so, and you start looking at all the small stuff that's not in place for your active shooter or what have you, and there's a lot of exposure within this courthouse, so.
I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, I've been thinking about that.
I will say that last night we came in, because the courthouse was closed, we came in last night for our fair board meeting and must have tripped the alarm because Nick come running, so it's good to know that part's working. Yeah.
You know, we've interrupted a few
Yeah,
meetings in our
so
life,
we agreed that, maybe in the future we'll call ahead of time and that dispatch know we're gonna be here, so.
Well, and just so we know, I mean, some of the people that work there have been there for a period of time, they know
Sure.
people that come and go. Some of them, as soon as it's 5 o'clock, they go, boink, or 6 o'clock, they hit that.
Yeah.
And
So anyway,
we always know what it is. We've never had a bad guy in here. It's always been somebody having a meeting.
yeah.
So we will close the commissioners' meeting and open a public hearing to adopt a resolution authorizing participation in the InterCap loan program. Resolution authorizing participation in the Board of Investments of the State of Montana Annual Adjustable Rate Tender Option Municipal Financing Consolidation Act Bonds InterCap Revolving Program, approving the form and terms of the loan agreement and authorizing the execution and delivery of documents related thereto. So is there any public comment on the resolution for Board of Investments? This is the Board of Investments for the purchase of the Opportunity Bank building. Is there any, yes, Tim?
Mr. Chairman, Tim with Readout News. Just a real quick recap. The amount of the loan for those that have not been able to follow this. And then question 2 is the InterCap loan program, where does that funding originate that is borrowed to the county?
Okay, the loan amount is for $200,000. The purchase price is $150,000. The reason we got the $200 loan is for construction improvements we have to make over there to house the ambulances and secure the area for that, and also to house some maintenance vehicles in there. Specifically, I believe the plow truck and the 4-wheeler to plow the sidewalks and stuff in the winter in the parking lot. I couldn't tell you do you know where the funding comes for InterCap loan? I don't know where that comes
It's a state question, probably not one that we would have.
from. Okay, something to do with the state board, I would guess would get you that answer. Is there any other public comment? Okay, we'll close the hearing and reopen the commissioners' meeting for the decision to adopt a resolution authorizing participation in the intercap loan program. Is there a motion or discussion?
No, I think, I remember Corey looked at all the, documents, he was good with them, except for the one part in there where the, attorney's fees would be paid by the county. He was suggesting that we do what we did on the bank loan documents, is have everybody pay their own fees if something were to happen. That was his only suggestion, so.
And I would suggest that we maybe put that in a motion to approve. That
Sure.
shouldn't be enough to hold up the
Right.
process.
Mhm.
And then we can have those attorneys get together
Mhm.
and come up with that language, especially if it is in statute.
Right.
Is there any other discussion?
I don't have any.
So we will have a vote to approve the resolution authorizing participation in the intercap loan program. All in favor?
Maybe we need to make a motion first,
Oh, yeah, somebody make the motion.
I'll make that motion, Mike.
Go ahead.
And just as you stated it, it was brilliant.
So the motion's been made, is there a second?
And I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Go to 10:30, Sean Rowland, sanitarian, authorization for food certification process.
Morning. This is kind of a follow-up to one of the
Could you-
Board of Health, something that we discussed at the Board of Health. And what I'd like to propose is, right now, through the Food and Consumer, we have money that we get back for doing the food inspections and the inspections of public accommodations, and it's right at $5,000. And if I were to do it, my contract is for $90 an hour, and what I was proposing to do is I have an employee that can come in at more like $50 an hour, and I'd like to bring her in to do the licensed establishments. And I think it was Commissioner Obert that had indicated we should talk about that in this forum, not the Board of Health, because I'm not contracted with the Board of Health, but through you all. So I think that's really what the discussion is about, is coming in and doing this work at a lower rate, but also then I would cap it at the amount that you're getting back. So if it takes us a little more time, we'll just adjust our fees to be at that $5,000. So, are there questions, thoughts?
This is actually how we've done food inspections for years. So it's really not a different practice. I appreciate you bringing it forward. We used a company called Yes for a while, and then another sanitarian who'd retired.
So is this employee, is your employee?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's funny because my contract says that I'm $90, that the company bills out at $90 an hour. I hadn't included her in that contract, so we can either adjust that or as a, I don't know how we need to formally do it. You can let me know how.
I will move that we move forward with Sean's plan as described and authorize his personnel to do the food inspections at the amount paid by the state.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve Sean hiring his employee at $50 an hour to do the food inspections, food services inspections. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. So the next thing on the agenda is the interlocal agreement. Mayor Evans is not here. Do we want to proceed, or?
I'm ready to vote aye. I did get a chance to review it. I think it's a good, interlocal. I understand it was the product of a group of people working together. So I'm good if you wanna wait, and I'm good if you wanna move forward.
I'm okay with moving, are
I'm
you?
I'm okay with moving forward, yeah, we discussed it at the last meeting, and I
Okay.
feel good about that, so.
Is there any further discussion? So we'll have to entertain a motion to approve the interlocal agreement for general law enforcement service between Broadwater County Sheriff and the City of Townsend. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the local agreement between Broadwater County and the City of Townsend.
Is there a second?
Yes, I will second the motion.
Motion's been made, second to approve interlocal agreement law enforcement service. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Do you have a cost on that, Mr. Chair? As part of that agreement, just per year?
Fiscal year 2019, 252,272. And then the other years, fiscal year 2020, 21, 22, and 23. Fiscal year 2020 has a 2.5% increase. 21 has a 21 through 23 have a 3% increase. And Win, there's a line on here for you to sign also. Thank you. Thank you. Next item is a tax refund for the Thornton property. Department of Revenue Assessment Error and Tax Overpayment. Is anyone here for the Thorntons? No. Okay.
I think we're still waiting on more information to come back from the Department of Revenue about what that amount will be, and, before we can make that decision.
And they're supposed to figure out what the actual overassessment was?
Yes.
So we will table that until we get some more information. We can move on to the Trust Board. Request to hire Peter Simons for Galzagori pedestrian trail work and the contract for secretarial services for Debbie Randolph.
I don't believe we're ready to proceed with the Peter Simon agreement.
Okay.
That's still pending. And I believe you have a copy of Debbie Randolph's contract.
Did you see
No, I
the
didn't.
copy with Debbie?
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Is there any further discussion on the contract with Debbie Randolph for the trust board?
You're gonna be independent contractors, is that right? Yeah.
I do think we should discuss it. And I guess before discussing it, I just wanna say that as long as we stick with the facts, there's nothing personal. I don't think we should be twisting each other's words. And I do think we should be able to maintain civility. So if we look at MCA, best practices, advice from MACO, equity, consistency with what we've been doing in the 2.5 years that we've been putting together a new process for our boards, I don't think we can sign this contract. There's a couple of reasons why. Money. We need to watch to make sure that every penny of the people's money is spent as frugally and responsibly as possible. We were able to give a 3.9% COLA to our staff this year, not without complaint and comment. This is a 20% increase in pay. I think it's excessive. I was here in the years that the trust board didn't have money. Today they're sitting on about 900,000 last I saw. But someday we will revert back to not being able to do much because of economic reasons, potentially a slowdown in the stock market, what have you. And I do question paying a secretary. We've been moving towards not paying secretaries for boards, having board members take on that role. We have staff that assists our different boards, and we have new staff coming on that will be working with planning, who assists with the rec board. I think that person could actually perform the secretarial duties in-house and at roughly half the cost. So I think just for starters, based on equity, what you do for one, you do for all, based on being frugal, I think we should actually I do think the trust board needs a secretary. That they are a different board in some ways than our other boards, they're still advisory. But I do think it should be an in-house position, not contracted. And not at that much.
Here is a copy for each of you, and you, Ann. In 2003, we were paying Rose Olson $20 an hour when we didn't have any money. COLA between 2003 and 2019 is 2.12%. $20 an hour in 2003 equates to $28 an hour now. Rose Olson, we supplied an office, computers, and printers. Debbie Randolph supplies all of those at her expense.
Well, our trust board's kind of a unique board. They're way different than any other boards that we have. And, the work that you guys have been doing in the past, you can't do it all on your own. I mean, you guys are volunteers, and we appreciate the work that you do, and I think you need some help. And I know that Debbie does a good job. I look at some of the research that she does and things that kind of keep you guys on task in your meetings. I guess in this case, I feel it's warranted.
Terrell, you said you can't do it on your own. I did mention providing secretarial services, but at 50% of the cost, it would open up better communication, and it would save the people's money.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I know when we talked about that position, I mean, I don't recall us talking about that person being an assistant to the trust board, or helping the trust board in any manner. I mean, they're to help planning and help our sanitarian. That was my understanding of that position.
I agree, it's only at 32 hours or 36 hours. We could easily provide another couple hours. It wouldn't have an effect on health insurance benefits. And should there be a downturn in the economy, it's a whole lot more responsible. That person would then have those hours either not doing anything for the trust board, or those hours they could give to planning. But it wouldn't be costing us anything. I understand probably with the contractor, if there's nothing being done at the trust board, it wouldn't cost anything either. But there still is a requirement for quarterly meetings, and I believe that's in statute, so you are paying a little bit. There's no argument to take away the secretarial services, because like you said, I agree, they're a unique board. But I believe it should be in-house like our other secretarial or assistant duties for other boards. I'm just looking at equity, best practice. We also have, from our last training at MACO and previous trainings, the question is, who pays the employee? And the answer is the county does. And we have been bringing those positions into the county for that reason. There's a couple of boards that we've been dealing with on that. And there's a reason for that, and this is just maintaining equity. What you do for one, you do for all. Elaine Gravely drilled that into my head, and she was right. And again, this is nothing on Debbie, she does do a great job. This is nothing more than being frugal with every penny, and equity.
So Steve, you've been with this board for quite some time. Have you guys, you've always had a paid secretary?
We have. When we set it up with a paid secretary. There was too much money involved, and in addition to the $900,000 you're sitting on now, we're sitting on an additional $300,000 of funds that we could draw. We're making money on it where it is, where with the $900,000 that we leave with the county, we don't make any money on, so we're leaving $300,000 in reserve.
And I would say that's maybe another argument for bringing this in-house. That's a lot of money for limited oversight. And to set this up in the...
Fabulous job with that money, so.
I'm not debating that at all, Steve. I'm just strictly speaking the facts. Best practice, MCA, advice from MACO. I'm just trying to follow that. How this was set up in 2003, none of us was here. But I would question if MACO had been involved, if they would have suggested a different structure.
I would caution, this is not our first go-around. I was here in 2003. And at that period of time, we had another financial institution handling that money, and it did not work out. So we pulled those funds from that institution, moved to another one with better security, we felt, and better understanding of the needs of Broadwater County Trust Board. Since that period of time, we've generated and spent millions of dollars, and our books are open. This is not a fly-by-night thing that we get to touch. Anything we spend has to go through you prior to. So we audit ourselves. It's a very secure thing. Our finances need to be independent of the county's finances. I think that's a concern, and from a financial stability standpoint.
And it wouldn't change that at all. And it is now separate, and that's maintained, and would be.
I just
Yes,
have one
Debbie.
statement about oversight with the First Premier account, which has 2.8 million and some change. Nothing can happen to that account without a letter from you all. Not even a letter from the trust board. It has to be from you. And as you know, nothing from the trust board county account can happen without you.
And I acknowledge too that we changed and corrected some of the missteps made by the trust board.
What were those missteps?
We had a meeting with you guys in a private, closed door because there was some legal issues with that, so I'm not gonna go into those details, I think we all
Those
know.
weren't personnel issues, those probably should be aired.
They were, did you and Corey put together any kind of a letter of what happened in that meeting? The newspaper said you were going to. I haven't seen anything.
No, I don't, I think that it was still stuff that was, there was enough in there that it should have been a closed door meeting.
Okay, I'm not gonna divulge then, but I am gonna say that based on that, no, they weren't personnel, and we're not necessarily talking personnel. In fact, we're not at all talking personnel, we're talking better oversight, better adherence to MCA, policies, best practices, and better use of money. It's, again, nothing is personal, but I don't
I
think
believe
that's
it is
necessary,
personal.
Steve.
I
I don't
it
think
is.
that we need to be doing that. Rolling eyes, it's not necessary. I'm gonna stand on what I've said.
Okay.
But there have been some missteps by the trust board, and I am concerned about sitting on that much money without efficient oversight. And I do question spending, that much on personnel and a 20% increase. It's, I have heard from staff, I've heard from the public. I think I've made my points, and, unless you guys have any questions of me.
I don't want to drag this back through the larder several more times. And I think it is a personal thing against the trust board, but Laura personally, but that's neither here nor there. That's not what I'm here for. We're here to get this contract approved, and we stray from the contract into dribble and innuendos that aren't aired, and I'd rather not get into that. So I would really appreciate that contract being honored. She does a good job. It's not a lot of money, it's 2.12%. Figured over the last 16 years, plus much broader services. Debbie, do you
No, I was just gonna
have? Okay.
echo what you just said.
Okay.
Did you have any comments?
No, I was just gonna echo what Steve just said.
So is there any further discussion?
Can I make a comment? I don't have any skin in the game, don't have a dog in the fight, to be honest with you. Listen to everything they hear, but because you're an employee of the county doesn't prevent fractions of the law. You know, I can go back, we can go back the last couple of years on how many treasurers in the state of Montana have been charged and convicted for embezzling money from the county. So, just because you have a title as a county employee does not exempt bad decision-making process. And it actually opens the door to more embezzlement actions than I think than what you're seeing right now. So, like I said, no dog in the fight, no skin in the game, but just because you're a county employee does not mean that you're not gonna break the law. So, you know, 2.8 million, it's a lot of money, I understand that. Sounds like there's some checks and balances already in place. But I just because there's an assumption that because you are an employee that issues, that's just not completely correct, so.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. The issue at hand here is not about the money that they have oversight on. It's about Debbie Randolph's contract, and we need to stick to those facts, everybody. That's it. Okay? That's what I gotta say about that.
Tim?
Mr. Chairman, Tim Ravendall, citizen taxpayer, been following what's been going on here with the Broadwater Trust Board, and even before that with Mr. McCullough as commissioner. The professionalism with these people is unquestionable. And to not go forward and promote or to support their request to keep things current, and I gotta compliment them on one more thing. They're working for the citizens of Broadwater County, not Mako. And so with that said, I would really urge the commission to agree to what they're trying to do to maintain that transparency of their board, because transparency is where corruption cannot hide. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? So is there a motion to approve the contract?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we approve the contract for Debbie Randolph.
Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the contract between the Broadwater County Trust Board and Debbie Randolph Winter Circle Administrative Services. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same.
No,
Motion carries.
my dissenting comment is, based on the fact that we're talking about $2.8 million, I think we need better oversight, greater transparency, to follow MCA best practices and equity in this matter.
Do you think you guys would be ready for Peter Simon next week? We need to put it on our agenda.
The ball's in Peter's court right now.
Okay, just let us know.
We will.
Okay, you know, we're kind of up against those weird deadlines for the paper here this next week.
That's right.
So if
So
it has,
actually,
and if it has,
today's too late.
and if it has to be on the 28th, we need to have to let us know by Friday.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying? And
I'll
then-
email Peter.
And then is it the 21st, is that right? Where we at here? Yeah, 21st, we have to know by Wednesday, so.
Thank you.
So just let us know, and we can
Thank you.
get that done, yeah, thanks.
So we can go on to the 1045, Allison Costco, MSU Extension, John Rouser Fair Board. Combined Extension and Fair Management staff determine job description and salary via matrix. Allison's daughter has pink eye and she's not gonna be here today, so. Did you get a chance to go over the latest job description that she sent out, John?
I did.
Okay.
Reviewing that, I think we're getting closer to, something that the Fair Board would be willing to be able to work with on that. There were some of the things that, last week, after that, it was like, I was pretty concerned about how it was, maybe gonna be transpired, everything like that. I just wanna make sure that, this position would be an advisory rather than a supervisory position. I just don't think that, if part of that position is advisory or supervisory, then Allison can't be a supervisor for her part of the job, for her extension side of it. So I just wanna make sure that everything's gonna be advisory and not supervisory, and enable the Fair Board to make sure that we can take care of things out at the fairgrounds and run a fair. I mean, we did this year. And one of the concerns that Allison has was the salary on that, and that's a concern for me as well, because with our limited budget to run a fair, probably 75% of that budget goes to salary. I haven't checked those figures exactly, but I just want to make sure that, we have a fair salary position for that, if it's going to be a full-time I mean, we've always paid 8.5 hours a week, year round. Expected that fair manager to put in more time during fair week, closer to fair July and then that fair week. And if things didn't have to be involved, during the winter time, we just, I guess they drew us 8.5 hours a week and got paid for basically doing nothing through the winter time. And so that's kind of the way we've always done that. So if that's some change that you, the commission, want us to do, we need to know. I just need to know what kind of your agenda is and how you want us to proceed as fair board.
It's kind of, I mean, it's an idea at this point.
Yeah.
The challenge that we're having is
Mhm.
Allison's having a difficult time filling her position as well as our fair manager's position, so.
Right.
And that's why we gotta discuss this. And the last thing I wanna say is we don't wanna get in the way of the way you guys have been running the fair this past years. I mean, I sit on your meetings, you guys got it dialed in, and
I appreciate
we
that.
don't, we don't wanna get in the way of that
Yeah.
at all. You guys gotta do a wonderful job there, so.
And I know some of the duties that we've had listed for the fair manager to do, because of some of the time constraints to get it all done in that, the fair board members have taken on a lot of those duties
Yeah.
to take care of that, to alleviate that,
They have.
just so it gets done.
Well, this past year was a great example, Jessica left just before the fair. You guys all stepped up and did a fantastic job, so we appreciate that. I see, a lot of advantages for us combining this position, and I see a few little challenges along the way. And I think that as we come across those challenges, if we do decide to move forward with this, that we all need to kind of work together and, have those conversations. Because what I see happen is, somebody doesn't feel strongly about one thing, and we lose the communication part. And that's where we get into trouble, so we need to keep
Yep.
those lines of communication open, okay?
You bet.
Hey, John, can I ask you a question about money, salary?
Yep.
So, I'm not getting the numbers to jive. When we met with Allison and Val last week, she said that the fair manager position is 283 hours per year. And if I add that to 1664, which is what Allison's assistant has been, I come up with 1947 per year. 2080 is full-time. If we do 8, I didn't do 8.5, but if we do 8 hours times 250 hours per year with 2 weeks vacation, I come up with 2,000. How many hours do you guys pay the manager for? Do you know off the top of your head?
We paid 8.5 hours per week,
And was that times 252 then?
times, 52 times 8.5, 52
Okay.
weeks times 8.5.
Okay, so this position, talking about not being sure about the pay and the money, we were talking last week about a full-time position. We could be talking about less than that, which allows for a little bit more wiggle room with the pay. Because between what you guys paid a fair manager and what Allison had for her assistant, it doesn't appear to be, I'm not sure, that's where I'm not jiving. That wouldn't appear to be full-time at 40. But if you're talking about a assistant at 32 hours per week plus 8.5 from the fair, we are talking full-time. So I think that's just something we need to dig into with finance. Have Debbie and Michelle figure out what that would be. 'Cause I don't think we know.
I know when Jessica left, her salary, her hourly wage was way more than what Allison stated that she could be willing to pay with her budget in an extension. So that's where my concern is too. I wanna make sure that we work that out. Because I don't believe that it's fair that Allison can only pay X amount, and then we tell, okay, for 8.5 hours a week, you get X amount more, because that's not right. We gotta make it even across the board
Right,
on that, if we're gonna combine this position.
yeah. Do you think, if it were a combined position, John, do you think the 8.5 hours per week, could that be reduced to 8 to make it a 2,080
Oh, I'm sure we could do
position?
that. Like I said, I believe we have the fair board right now. We have a good working fair board that we've taken on a lot of those, we're volunteers, we've taken on a lot of those responsibilities to help make sure that the fair manager doesn't go over those hours. And so I think we can make that work, I really do.
I don't remember in our meeting who suggested that perhaps maintenance could oversee the groundskeeper position. I don't know that anyone talked to maintenance, I didn't.
No, it was just a suggestion,
But
I think we were talking
A
about.
question I have on
about
that, John, would be, do you see any merit to that at all? I know there was some emails that opposed the idea. Is that the feeling of the board is, no, we want to keep it under fair,
We'd
order
like
extension?
we would like to keep it under fair.
Okay,
We really would. Just because the rodeo club pays for, a lot of the maintenance, or I guess 98% of the maintenance and repairs out there, and they own all the equipment except for the lawnmower and a couple of sprinklers and a couple of garden hoses. So if we have someone in that position where we can supervise through the fair board and through the rodeo club and make sure they understand how that equipment's run and understand that, rather than hire someone that doesn't really know anything about wheel lines, big gun sprinklers, things of that nature. We tried that about 5 years ago, and we spent more money repairing things than we did taking care of maintenance. We got behind. And so we want to make sure we have someone out there that we can supervise and make sure that they're doing the job the way not only the fair board wants it, but the rodeo club, because they do have the lease on the entire grounds.
so the, I guess I'll wait and let you guys ask some questions.
I know there's gonna be times, like in December, January, February, and March, where if this is a combined position, Allison's gonna be able to utilize that person more 40 hours a week for extension type stuff, because there really isn't gonna be anything needed on the fair side of things in those time periods. We're gonna start getting busier in April, May, June, and July, when we're starting to get our vendors starting to call up, say, hey, we wanna, have a booth out at the fairgrounds or out at the fair, things of that nature, and that's where that comes into play. And if there's someone in the office, all the time to take those calls, that would be great.
I think that would be a good community service, yeah.
I mean, I guess I don't know, did we have anybody apply for that fair manager position at that 8.5 hours a week prior to this discussion? Because I never did see any applications if we did.
I think that there were,
I had heard there weren't.
yeah, I think that there were a couple people that just didn't seem like they were qualified to even go forward, from what I recall.
Okay, yeah, because if there were, like I said, I didn't see any, and so we weren't made aware of any, so,
I'd have to check Michelle on that for sure.
okay,
Maybe it was just people that expressed an interest, I don't know.
okay.
So one of the things we're trying to move away from, John, is boards having supervisory authority, again, what we just talked about. So would you envision that perhaps the fair manager position of this versus extension would oversee groundskeeper? Is there a way that you would maybe see that working? Any thoughts on that?
I think in the capacity in the past, you know, the fair manager and the board has worked together to do that.
So it's
So-
kind of status quo, but technically under the fair manager, but working with you guys on that advisory way.
Mhm.
Okay,
I know a lot of times, when Michelle Christensen was the fair manager, and even when Jessica was, if there's a question as far as like the groundskeeping and whatever, they just refer that groundskeeper to call me. And so we take care of, you know, anything that needed to be done on that. And then I in turn would communicate with either Vince Thompson when he is president of the rodeo club, or Win when he's president. And, you know, just so we all know what's going on and work together on that.
yeah, that's, you guys have come a long ways, and I love the relationship you have now. I think that's really a feather in your cap, so
Thank you.
nicely done.
Thank you.
So I guess the other issue that we have is that a board member is not supposed to be a paid groundskeeper, so how are you gonna address that? Are you just gonna advertise for another groundskeeper, or?
Is there a statute that says that we can't do that?
Well, that's what Mako's telling me.
Can I see that statute?
Yeah, Mako says it, and there's also Attorney General's
Okay.
opinion on that. You want me to read it?
Okay, I've just never seen it, so I'd like to see it.
So this question came up about members of hospital district, public works, and different entities that were on boards and were also employees. So it's too much to read here, but I'll just read some of the highlights. So the Montana Supreme Court has recognized that two offices are incompatible when one has the power of removal over the other, when any one is in any way subordinate to the other, when one has the power of supervision over the other, or when the nature of the duties of the two offices are such that as to render it improper from considerations of public policy for one person to retain both. And it goes on to say at the end, it says, in each situation, the individual must choose between the clashing duties of two positions. A choice that the doctrine of incompatibility of offices was designed to avoid. So, that's where the question comes in. If they have any type of supervisory responsibility or over that person, then that's where that's at.
Can I get a copy of that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my question now is, does this position have anything to do with what we're trying to accomplish here today? Okay,
No, it
So
can
is it
be
another-
it can be a totally separate issue. It just so happens
Another
that's the
agenda.
way it is now.
yep, just another agenda item for,
Yeah.
And I guess the other part of that too would be that you couldn't have a board member also be your fair manager.
okay.
So it does have bearing a little bit, just because we're talking about job description, but we don't have to make that decision today at all, on how that wording is.
Yeah. Another opinion was that commissioners can't be employees. I can't be an employee at the road department and be a commissioner. Can't do it. I can't supervise myself, I can't fire myself.
John, another thing that Allison had said today in her email, were you CC'd on that?
Mhm.
About the booking of the 4-H building,
Mhm.
that should stay with Lisa and the board. I think that would be something we could definitely make sure is in the job description as well, that stays with the board unless the board wants to change that, then we can work through that. I didn't see an issue, did you guys?
No. I
No.
don't see
Yeah, I
any.
thought that was an easy one.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because